Bam, 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 bam.
Well, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for getting up early after all those evening events. I know it was hard for some of us.
Especially us.
So we're going to talk to you today about world schooling. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you kind of have an idea of what world schooling is? Awesome. Oh, my gosh. That's great. And how many of you are homeschoolers? How many of you are unschoolers? And how many of you are just sort of deciding and playing with, how should I educate my child? Just one, two. Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions. The reason why we're all here at an unschooling conference is we're all concerned about, educating our children. And we want to do that in the best possible way for our families and for our children and provide the best experiences possible. How many of you got into unschooling or homeschooling because, number one, you didn't like the system or the alternative? Okay. And how many of you got into homeschooling, unschooling because you really thought it was a better way to educate your child? And the learning possibly was the most important thing? Okay, that's interesting. So for those of you that did not raise your hand about the learning, just give me a shout out, what was most important, the most important reason why you chose this path? Happy, okay. Anybody else? Perfect. Freedom. My last name is actually Liberty, which is freedom. So we live and embody that. So, okay. Experiences. Awesome. Well, I'm going to just give you a quick intro to who we are. And you guys are 100 steps in front of us when we started out. We got into this, we discovered it by accident. I was not a homeschooler. Of course, I wanted my child to be happy. I had that. But I always thought it was somebody else's job to educate my son. And I never bought into, I can do this myself. I'm empowered. I've got the freedom. I never thought that. But in 2008, the economy crashed. I'm a single parent, always have been, although his father and I have been in total partnership, being co-parents, but not together. So the decisions that we made were always, with the approval and with the support of his dad. In 2008, the economy crashed, like I said, and I owned a business. I worked in advertising and marketing for 18 years, and the last 8 of those years, I had my own branding agency. So when the economy totally crashed in California, I watched my clients go away one by one by one by one, and I was stressed out. The amount of stress that I embodied in my body was, I would walk down the road or, you could feel the stress. I was projecting so much of stress. And basically, as a single parent and a co-parent, I was not spending time with my child, with my son, and I was realizing that I was missing him growing up. So in 2008, he was 9 years old, and I was the custodial parent, and I said to him, just tears one night after, doing the financials, and everybody had gone home, and we're still sitting in the office, and it's like 9 o'clock, and I said, let's get out of here, Miro. Let's go have an adventure. Let's just go climb a mountain. Let's do something. I knew it was in October, that I was not bringing my staff back the following year. I knew that I had to close my doors, and I knew that our life had to change. I couldn't afford it. It was just like, stress, pressure, single parent. Because he would say to me all the time, you want to say it?
Mom, you never spend any time with me.
You're always working. And so my heart always broke in like a million pieces. And my thoughts were, but wait a minute, I'm doing everything I can. I'm providing a future for us. You just got to deal with it. And when he was born, one of the things that, before he was born, that I do constantly is I get obsessed with something and I study it and I read everything I can about it and I really dive in feet first. And I was fascinated and completely taken over by the concept of attachment parenting. So I was determined to be an attachment parent, and I raised him as an attachment parent. And I'm going to come back to this because it really played a role in our travels, which is something that we embarked in the future. But I'm just sort of giving you the background, what led up to this. So in 2008, end of 2008, I closed my doors to my business. I knew that my employees were not coming back, and we started to sell everything. Now, there's we can talk for hours about, working in consumerism and what that was doing to my soul, and I just wanted to shed all of our possessions. There was this feeling of, we've got this stuff. I've got my Mercedes. We've got our loft. We've got all this stuff, a loft full of everything that you ever wanted. He had everything he ever wanted because I had money then. I was doing the right thing. I was doing what I had to do. I was providing in such a way that I was capable of, and I was succeeding at doing it. But all that stuff started to grow. It just sort of grew up our spine. It sort of gave us this feeling of, I don't want this. I don't want this. I'm succeeding, but I don't want this. So when we didn't have a choice anymore, and the decision was, okay, the doors are closed, he said, yes, I'm in. Let's go. Let's go have an adventure. In January, when we were waiting all through the end of the year, we told, my family, no presents, nothing at all. In January, we announced we were leaving. So we started selling everything, and we started giving things away, and it took us 6 months to prepare. Now, mind you, I said in the beginning, Miro was in school because I had no idea about home education. Again, it was somebody else's job to educate my child, and I was doing my job, and somehow we had time in between. We had to wait for him to finish school, and in July of 2009, we took off. Everything was sold. We had no more possessions other than what we put in storage. I wish I could say we were able to shed everything right away, but that two or 3 years later, we came back and got rid of all that. So now what we have is upstairs in our room, which fits into our suitcases. We have 3 of them. I wish we could say we had 2, but we have 3 of them. So that's what we did. 2009, in July, we took off. And we had no intention for this to become an education. We were leaving because not only I personally needed to de-stress. My heart was broken because, 10 years now of my son saying, Mom, you never spend any time with me. You're always working. I was going to commit 1 year to changing that, to changing it. Go ahead.
And that was 7 years ago.
So what happened was we left 2 people from the United States. I was still stressed, but we were very, very fearful of what was in front of us. I knew intuitively 5th grade had nothing on a year of travel. I knew intuitively that he would learn more in this 1 year, because we were set out for 1 year, than he would in the classroom. And I knew that he was miserable in the classroom back in Los Angeles. So natural learning is something that happened, and we were noticing that left and right. We weren't trying to learn. We were just learning because we were experiencing the world. And everything that I'm going to share with you today is our process, our way of reconnecting to our own ability to learn naturally. You don't have to sell everything. You don't have to leave the country to do this. You can do it in your own way, however you can do it. But this just happens to be our vehicle to get us to this place. So even if you're not planning on traveling, you can take a lot from our process and our experiences and utilize it in your own life. So natural learning happened. Within the first year, you were speaking...
I was speaking minimal Spanish.
Right.
But I was starting to pick it up. In the first year, I was learning many things, really, that I could never have thought of learning in 5th grade.
Right. So we were climbing ruins. We were speaking to people, talking about the archaeological sites. And suddenly, interests were sparked in places that we never had interests before, just because the world around us was providing so much stimuli. We were like, wow, what's that? You know, or suddenly we're in a jungle and we wanted to learn about the ecology. Why does it work in such a way? Why are there animals and insects, and why are they, you know, there were so many fascinating things to learn. So natural learning is something that we became passionate about. Again, we still had no idea about unschooling. We had no idea about homeschooling. And this was not intentional for us at this point. So what is world schooling? Well, I just explained that learning from the world is world schooling. And over the last 4 years, I've become an advocate for this type of learning. We are active in the unschooling world because we are, in essence, radical unschoolers. That's the lifestyle that we choose. But because we are radical unschoolers who are traveling, we call our style of learning world schooling. But because we've been advocating for world schooling and transforming the world into your classroom, we embrace all kinds of learners. Learners who use curriculum, learners who travel to other countries and go to schools, you know, as an expat, learners who are just taking trips. And world schoolers are people that live in their hometowns that want to shift the way that they intentionally look at the world around them and learn from the world. And we're going to talk a little bit later on some strategies on how to do all of these things, whatever your situation is. So even if you're not traveling, you can be a world schooler. You just need to really shift the way that you look at the world around you. And there's a couple of things that you can do, and we'll talk about that later. So that's what world schooling, it's all inclusive. You know, you're not kicked out if you don't travel. There's no, group to join. It's just a commitment to intentionally learning from the world around you. Earlier I talked about attachment. We could not have taken on this journey had we not followed attachment parenting. And how many of you were in Teresa's talk yesterday? Okay. So talking about attachment and connection, she talks about it from the perspective of the parent. But the connection and the attachment is such a vital part of what we're doing. We are so connected and so attached, and we still continue it through the teen years. And this is, I am absolutely certain, to be a long-term traveler, if you're ever interested in that, you have to have this foundation already established. And why? Attachment and world schooling really go hand in hand. The reason is we're traveling. That's the form of our world schooling. And I said to you in the beginning, we were very afraid. Now, we went through this fear together, and we got through this fear together. And we spoke about all of the little concerns that came up as they came up. But when you're in the world being safe and secure, that's that's got to be the most important feeling. And had we not overcome those fears together, and had we not found a place of security, because we already had the foundation of our relationship and that connection. So his fears were just as valid as my fears. My fears were something that we would talk about. His fears were something that we would talk about. And through the security of being attached to one another, and being that we both realized that they were so important, through the attachment and our experience, we were really able to develop our intuition. We were able to learn how to listen to our inspiration, and we learned how to differentiate that from fear. Fear, we've really discovered, is more of a mental brain activity, where the other things like intuition and inspiration, they felt, we can feel them in different places in our body. And through intuition, there are many times we did not get into a cab, right?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, attachment and going through these processes together is one of those vital foundations. So fostering attachment through the 4 S's. This is basically taken from Dr. Daniel Siegel's work, and he writes a lot about attachment parenting. I find his work so useful because the process of attachment really goes along with creating a strong foundation for traveling as well. So let's talk about what this means. And actually these 4 S's are in order, and if you are accomplishing one, then you move on to the next one. So what this means, the first S is to be seen. If your child is having a hard time with something, it really is important for you to show that you're listening to them. They are feeling like they're heard or they're seen, and whatever struggle that they're moving through is not happening in a vacuum, that you have compassion and empathy and you're listening to them. I guess listening starts with an L, and that isn't one of the S's, but I think seen and being heard are really what this means. If your child is going through a hard time and is struggling, the first thing that you're going to try and do is make them feel safe, a safe environment to actually have those feelings and know that they're on safe grounds in the family unit. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to listen, of course, with empathy and show that there's safety in feeling the emotions that they're feeling, but you're going to soothe them, and you're going to do that through, again, acknowledgement, and really actively listening. And finally, the last of the 4 S's is secure. Through attachment, it's really important, especially when traveling, that your child feels like they are secure with not only their own experiences, but the environment and the family unit. So fostering secure attachment with the 4 S's is a lesson that you can use throughout your life. But as you can see, it's especially important to utilize these techniques while traveling. So at some point we decided that travel is education. We were about 8 months into our travels, and what happened 8 months in?
We decided that we could not go back to our conventional life. It just wasn't going to happen. It didn't fit anymore. So together we decided, everything that we do, because, well, I'm going to get to what we're doing. We decide as a partner. We're in true partnership. And in one of the talks yesterday, I commented that we live in a partnership paradigm. And I am so aware that it's much easier to do with 2 people, but I know the partnership paradigm can be expressed with larger families. But the way that it works for us is all decisions are made together. I have no ability to say, well, we're going here. I'd like to go here. What do you think? Can we do this? Does this work for your schedule? And so, very simple things like that
are expressed through the partnership paradigm. But what I discovered after 8 months in was when we decided we're not going back, as the parent, I need to look at, oh my gosh, I have to educate my child now. It was somebody else's responsibility early on. Now I have to figure out what we're doing. So I thought immediately, of course we're going to homeschool. We'll do something, and he'll do his tests, and, this is what I thought. So I started researching as the parent because, again, being responsible is my job, and I'm taking care of my child. And I discovered that there was something called... Yes! And the crazy part was we were already doing it. And everything that we were already doing was now fit into a description of something. And my mind was absolutely blown. So when I discovered that not only we were unschoolers, and we qualify for being radical unschoolers naturally, I mean, we're already doing it, and we're learning naturally, this was it. I talked to Miro about it immediately. I was like, look what I found. Oh my gosh. He's like, cool. Does that mean I don't have to do anything? Yeah, cool. So when we decided to continue as now self-defined radical unschoolers, I got this is our education. We better learn something. So what that meant, going back to the partnership paradigm, was I decided that my interests, too, were important. And it was never something that I would think about burdening him with before. But now that we have this we were already in partnership paradigm, but now we have something, to qualify what we're doing, plus we're traveling. It's a great opportunity. I, too, was going to follow my interests. So we both made a pact that whatever inspired us, even if my interest didn't inspire him, he'd support me, and vice versa. So how many parents out there have watched a lot of video games? Okay, so that happened. But we also ended up going to a lot of archaeological sites. We also ended up doing a lot of things with alternative researchers because I'm ballsy enough to send an email and say, hey, can I, we're in this, this country or this site. Can I meet you? Can we intern with you for a day? Can we assist you? And we always got invitations. So because I now felt empowered to use the world around me, travel as education, to follow my interests, and dragged him along, and vice versa. I mean, we went to many farms because he had an obsession about permaculture and botany for many, many years. So we did a lot of things as partners in tandem. So anyways. Okay, so what is contextual learning? Real life instances of immersive world schooling. Miro's going to share with you. For those parents that are challenged by family members that say, what did your kid learn? What about math? What about sciences? What about this? I know it's the most annoying thing to hear. I know it. But what we decided to do, because we presented at a conference, it was sort of a very formal homeschooling conference, global education conference, was we broke down all the things and experiences that we've had into subjects. Now, we never do that in real life, but I'm just going to show you some examples, or Miro's going to show you some examples of the things that he's learned if he had to break it up for a formal conference or for a college application. So there you go.
Okay, so next slide. Naturally, traveling this much, geography just comes naturally because you can't help but learn geography once you're in these places. You're there on the map in these various different countries. And over our travels, we've been to about 13 countries over 7 years. which encompass different environments. Yeah, mountain, desert. We've pretty much been everywhere. This is a photo of us at the equator. We're on one side of the equator and the other as well. And I think that geography it's just really simple when you start traveling. It comes naturally. I never once studied geography, but I know where every country in South America is. Well, and Latin America. Well, Central America. Okay. And then you have geology. And we visited all these places. We visited, like, natural rock formations and volcanoes and salt flats. We've been to these places, and naturally by being there, you learn the science behind pretty much the environment. So you have ecology and ecosystems, which, again, you're there in the ecosystem. And you're learning about the animals because you see them in front of you. We've been to the Amazon rainforest, the Peruvian Andes, like the Costa Rican mangroves, and many like islands off of the Central American coast. And all these places have very unique ecosystems. And I think it's very interesting, of course. So, biology. So, I'll explain. Basically, we're dissecting a guinea pig here. We're guinea pig. In Peru, guinea pigs are it's almost like a delicacy. So here we're emptying the intestines to prepare the food. Yeah. So it was, yeah. I would say it's better than dissecting a frog. And it's real world biology, you know. You're in there. Literally. So, cultural studies. Kind of the same thing goes, you know, you're there in the culture. You're learning about anthropology by being around the people. You're learning about the art. It's really great. It really fosters, I think, a deeper cultural understanding for the people in your host countries. Mysticism and beliefs, I think that's an extension of cultural awareness. We spend a lot of time in Peru, and I would say that we're almost based out of Cusco now, which is in the Andes. And the mysticism is such a deep, integral part in the culture. So naturally, we've been to many like different ceremonies and different, you know, I don't want to say rituals, but like rites. And I think it's really interesting to see how the culture is preserved and how it's survived generation after generation. And I think it's beautiful because it's so deeply intertwined with everyday life there. This is during a despacho ceremony. This is basically you create a bundle, a package. Inside this package is like really colorful sweets and you know, animal fats and all different kind of goods, really. And it's a blessing to Mother Earth. Pachamama, yeah. Politics. It's another part of anthropology. Naturally, you see all of the different movements, really. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that you see out of the country. And especially once you've been out of the country, you kind of have a much wider view of the world. For example, you know, after being out of the country for a couple of years, being in Nicaragua or Guatemala, you start to learn about a lot of American intervention and a lot of all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting just to see how everything ties in. So, economics. You basically get to see how people are meeting their needs by doing what they've been doing for generations. So you see people who are fishing, and you see people who are doing like farming and all this different stuff. And it's basically the triple bottom line, which consists of people, planet, and profit. So it comes down to the people, so the social aspect of it. It comes down to the planet, so it's the environmental aspect of it, and then profit, which is the economic aspect of it. Perfect. Social movements. This is another big one. There's a pretty big counter movement in many of the different countries that we've been to. For example, let's see, LGBT movements in Latin America are vastly different than what they are here, which is really interesting to see. Because I think there it's really more of a struggle against the church as opposed to against another counter movement. And in South America especially, the indigenous rights movements are really getting traction now, and I think it's absolutely great and that they're starting to get recognized. And then you have again, it's kind of an extension of that, the protests against mining in rural areas. And it's really interesting to see all of these things come into play. Investigation and research, she spoke about that a little bit. Here we're working with an alternative researcher at a site in Peru. And we're trying to figure out the angle of this almost perfect ancient wall.
This guy, his name's Brian Forrester, he's been on Ancient Aliens about 10 times. So if you Google him, you can see his work. But we've assisted him on 4 different occasions.
Right. So basically, this comes down to, this means that we research a lot. We are unschoolers, but that doesn't mean that we don't research, especially when we know we're going to a site or an archaeological site especially. We do a lot of research before, while we're there, and after, really. So the research doesn't stop. We're always learning about a place, even if we're not there, just because we're so inspired to learn about it. And archaeology. This is a little overkill, I think, but I've been to what must be over 70 to 100, actually, archaeological sites over our 7 years. And throughout all the museums and throughout all of the field investigations, I guess you could say, I've seen over 1,000 artifacts and pieces of pottery and relics and just really ancient stuff. So we've learned about a lot of archaeology, and that's actually really because it's my mom's passion. I'm not actually too interested in archaeology, but because she is, I've learned so much about it. So I think that's a pretty good example. Botany, this was, and still is, one of my interests. I would always cut up plastic bottles and fill them with dirt and just grow random things. And pretty much anywhere we go, whatever's local, whatever I could find, really. And I don't know. I still love being so deeply connected to the plants. Being in about 12 countries, you see a lot of different fauna, or flora, I should say. Okay, so, and being in open air markets and all this stuff. In Cusco, there's a beautiful fresh food open air market. And you go there, and Cusco's in such a good location because it has food from pretty much every climate, just because it's in the center of the country. So you see fruits from the Amazon, you see fruits from up in the highlands, you see all this different produce, and it's fresh, it's right there. And I don't think I've learned more about plants and plant life as I have there. So, marine biology. Here we're actually trying to put together a dolphin skeleton. This is really interesting. We've spent a lot of time doing a lot of marine biology stuff. We lived in Ecuador on the coast for about 10 months. This was pretty recent, and it was this year, yeah. We did a lot of stuff. We volunteered with the conservationalists, and we went out on the water. We worked with the whales. We did all of this stuff, and I think, again, it's just firsthand experience. I couldn't imagine learning about a whale or a dolphin from a textbook after this, especially. physical anthropology. I think you actually wanted to talk about this one. I can talk about this one. Well, basically, in this photo, we're working with a mummified skeleton, or a skull, and it's an elongated skull. So, sure you don't want to talk about this? You have a little bit more knowledge about this one.
All right, so we're at the Paracas History Museum here, and we offered to photograph these skulls because they didn't have a record of these skulls. Now, these skulls are elongated, and we picked up 19 of them, put them on this homemade turntable that we made, and that little thing that the skull's resting on is a piece of pipe, and we spray painted everything, and we set up. That's like my travel towel. And we set up my camera on a tripod, and we shot these things in 360 degrees. So, I mean, it's not really that exciting, that particular process of it, but what it meant was we got to pick up these skulls. We got to see skulls that are over 2,000 years old that are, some believe, are aliens. We got to learn how the plates of the head differ from those of today's humans. There are only two plates, where the normal humans have the two plates in the front and the one plate in the back. We got to look at the eye sockets and compare it to the eye sockets of other skulls that are modern humans. And 2,000 years old is not that old in terms of development. So we not only were we doing the physical anthropology, we were learning the cultural anthropology through the traditions, the stories. The locals were telling us these incredible things about these skulls, and whatever you believe, it doesn't matter. We've now expanded our experience and our knowledge to have this other bit of information that this can, play a part of our knowledge, our own personal knowledge base. But the interesting thing is, while we were here, we were there for 3 days photographing these skulls. And, they're very delicate. And the one that we picked up that had the mummified skin on it, this one had a little bit. We had one that was like almost completely covered in this mummified skin, and it still had red hair intact. That one stunk. But the second day that we were there, somebody put a plastic bag on the door of the museum, and because of all of these houses being built on these ancient sites, people are constantly finding things in their backyard or under their house. And so when we got there in the morning to finish our second or third day of photographing, the researcher and the guy who is a private museum, who's an anthropologist, we took this bag and we set it down on a table. We unwrapped this thing, and it was the mummified head of maybe 5,000 years ago. It was pre-Inca. It was so fascinating. So we're unwrapping this mummified head that was, it had this cheesecloth or some sort of natural fiber cloth that was still intact. That was part of their mummy. Ritual mummification process. This is real history. We got to live and experience this firsthand. So, anyway, that's that.
That's that.
Okay. My passion.
Perfect. History. Again, that's one of those things that you're in the history. You're in the history as it's happening. And as you're in these places, it's all around you. For example, like in Colombia, when we were spending a lot of time in Medellin, of course, we learned a lot about Pablo Escobar and that segment of history, and even like really ancient history as well. Like we live in Cusco, so the history is really all around us. We're constantly learning about it, and I think it's pretty amazing, actually, just being a part of it. So then you have applied arts. So we do take classes. We're not anti education. We take classes when we're interested, and applied arts is one of those things. Like across 12 countries in our 7 years, we've taken countless improv classes, and we've taken painting classes and all that kind of stuff. So, and it's interesting. Ethnobotany, yeah. Well, and it's interesting to learn about how they differ from country to country, because they really do. One artist will never be the same from one country to another. So I think that's also very interesting. Perfect. So now we're going to talk about non-academic learning. So this is, this is stuff that you really couldn't even learn in a classroom if you tried. So
again, we're always asked, how is this a valid form of education? And through unschooling and world schooling, again, all of this stuff you can use as non-travelers. Natural learning does create the opportunity to acquire real-life skills. So the first one is socializing. How will our unschooled kids ever be socialized? I'm sure you've all heard that. Well, we have too. Through world schooling and through unschooling, of course, our children socialize with people of all ages. This doesn't need to be said. But in the real world, we have the opportunity to meet and socialize with people of all walks of life, all ages, all economic statuses. We have sat on countless dirt floors and had the most amazing connections with families from different, cultures, economic statuses that we would never have the opportunity to do so in the United States. So we are, not only are we socialized as world schoolers, we're hyper-socialized. Tolerance and acceptance. This is one of those lessons that you do get through traveling. This is a beautiful family that we've stayed with twice, and they live on a small farm in Peru. In fact, they're the same family that taught us how to prepare cuy. And this is the mom. She has 5 kids.
I think so, yeah.
And they're considered wealthy in this farm town, and they have these little sort of areas that are rooms for each of the family members and their extended families. And then the outside or the inside is like a courtyard. And then the other side of the kitchen is a dirt floor, and it's outside, and they have a covering, and they have these outside fire areas. But they've got a lot of land, and then they've got 2 or 3 different pieces of land that are farmland. But everybody comes and lives in this one family communal area. And what an amazing family this is. There's so much joy, so much absolute heart and happiness in this family that your ability to say, but they're poor, or I just want to buy them a coffee machine, or here's a blender, or they don't need that. They just don't need that. So it allows you to see those things that come up inside of you and really deal with your own tolerance and acceptance for things that are different. Why don't you talk about this?
There have been countless times I can't even comprehend how many times we've either missed a flight, or there have been delays, or we've just had to wait for hours and hours on end.
Wait for our luggage, like we did on the way here. Our luggage made it to Colombia, and we made it here, and our luggage did not.
So, these things happen, and I think that there's nothing you can do. So once you accept that, you begin to practice your patience. And I consider myself very patient just because of this process, and I'm very happy about it.
In normal life, it must be said, we're all on schedules. At least I was when I lived a conventional life. We were rushing here, rushing there. We were on a schedule. We had to do this. We had to do that. Yes, granted, unschoolers are a lot more relaxed than those that are living a very, conventional life. But most of the time, you don't have the actual opportunities to practice patience. And let me tell you, travel serves it up. So you've got it. We are budget travelers. We stay in hostels. We volunteer. We We do a lot of things. This is actually taken from one of our retreats, but it's representative of the idea that we always contribute to communal meals. We always, with groups of people, wash dishes together. It's always about, creating a collaborative effort. So you're practicing the ability to work in groups when you're traveling, whatever the situation may be. It's a true opportunity to be in a group and to have that sort of group dynamic.
Overcoming boredom. Again, this really ties into patience. This photo is taken in, we were in the Amazon jungle here, is that correct? And, there's no electricity at all. So what do? Well, you read. You find ways to spend your time. You find ways to use your time efficiently. I think it really comes down to being resourceful with your energy, really. So it happens.
It happens. And I know this is an issue for unschooling families. I see it on the boards all the time. My child's bored. How do I fill his time? Or how do I, This travel gives you the opportunity to, here's our environment. Here's not just the boundaries, but the parameters that we have to deal with in this moment. What can you do to entertain yourself? It's either an internal process or an external process. But empowering my child, my son, during all of these, trips throughout the years, to find that solution himself has been one of the greatest practical gifts that I've been able to give to him. So, you guys see that? It's a moth on his glasses. Things happen. Things happen when you're traveling, and you just have to adapt. And again, the world giving us all of these opportunities that perhaps we're a little guarded and shielded from in real life. A moth lands on you, a snake slithers by. Things happen. You need to adapt, and plans do change all the time. So, go ahead.
Real world problem solving, because in the real world, there are problems that need to be solved. That's literally all it is. That's what it comes down to. Next slide.
How will my son ever learn math? Well, there's money conversion, budgets, money management. This is all arithmetic. This is all basic math. And because, again, we're in the partnership paradigm, it's not my money. This is our money. How are we going to spend it? And how much do we actually have when we convert it to, in this case, it's soles. So, what does that mean? What do we spend our money on? Has the conversion rates gone up? Have they gone down? Do we have more? Do we have less? So, this is math. This is that real life arithmetic. This is a big one for us. We're going to talk about this at the end of our talk. We host these immersive retreats, and our biggest focus is really diving into worldviews. Briefly, what worldviews are is learning to see the world through the eyes of other people. We're all looking at the world. We're all looking at our own situation through lenses that we've been given. They're either cultural, they're religious, gender, economic, they're personal preferences. They're all of these things, but we're looking at the world through these lenses. And this little boy in Colombia is looking at the world through his own lens as well. And it may be very different than Miro's in this moment. And so for him to be able to process, for Miro, for us to be able to process how the people around us are seeing the world and seeing us in their world helps give us a broader understanding of our own humanity. Through understanding worldviews, we've learned more compassion, we've learned empathy, and we've also really connected to our own humanity. So this is something that we're very active about. And yeah, we'll just leave it there. So if you are planning on traveling or planning on being a world schooler, we have created strategies to help you as a family, as a connected family, to keep you engaged. The first one is talk to everyone. Talk to everyone. Do you guys know who this guy is? Yes! So he was walking down the plaza in Cusco, and I just went up to him and started talking to him. We actually watched a soccer game together. Talk to everyone. It doesn't have to be a famous person. It could be the person sitting next to you in a juice bar. One of the connections that we've made through for our retreats is because we were sitting next to this beautiful father and son at a juice bar in the market and just started chatting, and we found out that their family owns a farm in the weaving area, and they come from a family of weavers. And we asked them, can we visit your family? Talk to everyone. He said, yes, they're our friends now. We've had a 4-year relationship with this beautiful family. And now they've started to welcome in other foreigners, because that one time that Miro and I sat next to the father and started talking to them and showed interest in their lives. Talk to everyone. The other thing is we always say yes to everything. This is our motto through traveling, but you could take this in your life as a non-traveler. Somebody asks for a picture with you. In this case, say yes. Somebody says, would you like to come up to our apartment and have tea? Say yes. Somebody says, I've got a tour leaving right now. Say yes. If they ask you, always say yes. There's always opportunities and adventures unfolding that had you said no, you would have never had that experience. So we do this. This is our practice, our absolute common practice that we do every single day.
Within reason, of course.
Yeah. Well, he's the voice of reason in this duo. Full buy-in. What that means is if you're doing something as a family, you have to agree that whatever it is that you're doing, you're going with your full commitment to be there in that moment together. If you are not, I had no desire to eat guinea pig, but because we had said yes to it, I'm going to be a part of it. I'm going to try it. I'm going to pull the guts out. I'm going to do everything that I have to do to have this full experience. So we have these words that we say to each other, even if like it's something that we really don't want to do. We've committed. We've said yes. We're in partnership. I just have to look at him and say buy-in, and he's like, oh yeah, okay. I gotta ramp it up. I gotta be present, and because this is our way of committing to our lives and the adventure that is our lives. We both need the reminders. But if you can create that kind of communication within the family that reminds one another that this is what you've committed to, it changes the experience because you really don't want somebody going, yeah, I'm here. Be of service. Why don't you talk about this?
Be of service. So throughout our travels, we've volunteered in many schools and many different projects, and I think with animals as well, and shelters and rescues. And I think it's one of the best ways to really feel and be a part of the culture. For example, here we're working with a school in Ecuador. We had just finished doing a puppet show, actually, for them. I think we did, what was it, Little Red Riding Hood in Spanish. So I think that it's really great. It's one of the best ways that you can connect with the people in your host country.
And we don't travel as tourists. We travel as visiting locals. There's no reason for us to go to resorts. There's no reason for us to only hang out with other travelers or tourists. We're going to a place because we really want to dig in and immerse ourselves into the culture, and that provides to us the biggest learning and the most satisfaction through our lives. This is actually that family, and that's the man that we sat next to at the juice counter in the market. And this is a family we, like I said, have visited many, many times throughout the years, and now we bring groups to visit this family. And these women sit on the dirt and do their weaving and have a beautiful community within their own family structure. And they taught us how to see the similarities. They have a group connection. They have family values. They have laughter. There's so much that we have in common versus what we don't have in common. And looking at it from that point of view really shifts the way that you engage with people. Here we are, actually at an old. This is a massive cemetery. There are like 5 or 6 different cultures buried below. There's the Incas, the Waris. What were some of the other cultures? I can't.
Nazca.
Nazca culture. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This is where those elongated skulls came from. They were found here. So we're walking around with the investigator, and look behind us. You see that there's an actual skeleton. We found so many artifacts here. It was crazy. But I loved the moment that Miro picked up the bone and was pretending to be a caveman. And I don't care if somebody was like, "You must be respectful." No, this is about having fun. We weren't hurting anything. We were really bringing the joy into everything that we're doing. And part of the thing that keeps us constantly engaged with one another and connected is laughter. We are always goofing around, always goofing around. I mean, look at this hat. We're walking through the airport with mustaches on, and people are just looking at us. I mean, it doesn't matter. Don't be too serious. Travel, life, all of it. It should be fun. It just should be fun. One of the other things that you should do as a family, seek interest-based experiences. If you've got a family of 4 people, one of your children is interested in animals, another is interested in fashion, make sure that your itineraries touch on the events or ideas or occasions that are based on your children's or your family's interests. And not just the children, the adults too, because sharing with all of those interests is so important. Budgeting is a family matter. Like I alluded to in the math, the arithmetic slide, budget together. Before we left for this trip, it was my money, and I took care of the finances and I took care of writing the checks. When we started traveling, this is our money, and he, can have anything he wants, absolutely anything, because it's our money. What the small budget that we have is our money. And if he wants to buy something, he knows how much we have. And because we've budgeted together, he knows how much is in excess. And he knows, and this was from the very beginning. We've had a very limited amount to travel on. This might blow you away, but we live on $1,000 a month. So it's really easy to budget $1,000 because we know how far that goes. We can divide that into weeks. How much can we spend on food? How much can we spend on, extra activities? I mean, that's not a lot of money, right? Are you guys blown away? Well, we're traveling. That's what we travel on. That's what we live on. So again, Miro says, "I want something. Here's the ATM card. Take it." But he knows. I mean, there's you give as unschoolers. Our children have freedom. They're trusted, and there's no reason not to trust and to have freedom. So this is a family matter for us. So if there's any way you can extend that in your real life, this is real life. This is real life. And just because we've taken travel as our vehicle to help create a partnership and an unschooling sort of paradigm in our lives, you don't have to travel to do this. I'm just so strong, feel so strong about this slide. Research together. You want to talk?
Talk about this one.
Okay. Before we go to a place, when we make a decision, we're going to research everything from where we're staying, how long we're staying, where we're going, how we're going to get there, what the schedules are. You can do this as a family. Where do we want to go? Where are we now? How much money is it going to take us to get there? How long is the bus ride? Practice your patience. Do all that research together as a family. With younger ones, if you're traveling, you can minimize that, but maybe you've got a daughter who loves cupcakes, and simply research the best cupcake store in that area, or just, involve your children no matter how old they are when you're doing a trip together. And always make history personal. So this is, you can interpret this however you want. For us, we're standing in front of a Miro wall, which is a mural, and he's named after the particular artist. But you don't have to find a mural that's your name. Make history personal really means if you've got family ties to a certain area, or if there's a personal interest, make sure that you can find that connection. And it's a personal experience. It's an internal experience versus there's the history of that. There's the history of that. Find some way to make it relevant to your story and to your family. Talk about this one. This is that market, by the way.
Yeah, this is in the market. And so we create relationships. For example, in this photo, this is Berta.
I miss Berta.
She was our vegetable vendor in Cusco. And we had been going back to her for about 2 years. And we formed just the best relationship. She was always so happy to see us. She would always just hug us and kiss us when we would walk up. And it's really just amazing to create a relationship and just be so connected with somebody from your host country. It's amazing. It really is.
And travel with music. Music is, it taps you into the joy of life. And whether you play music, it doesn't matter. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Have music around you. Music is one of those things that will always bring you into an amazing space. And it creates memories. If you remember listening to a song and just having the best time while you were dancing around with your family in Cusco, anytime that song plays again, you're going to remember that. Music is one of those really powerful tools, and I bring it up as something, even though it could be obvious, it's a reminder. Get outside. Okay, so I'll talk to this one. Miro is a gamer and a traveler. So I know many of your children are gamers, and many of you guys are gamers, women too. Balance your time. Balance your time through the family commitment, right? Create time for your kids or whoever is the gamer to have time to game. Game. Here's your 2 days. Game. And then we've got our 2 days of being outside. And because we travel very, very slowly, it's not like we're going to miss anything. We've got all the time in our lives. We're not on a schedule, so that's the good thing. But a lot of people are on schedules. So when you create a schedule, if you're a traveling family, schedule time to game for the inside. Schedule time for the outside, too. Document your travels. If we didn't have all the pictures that we have and the blog posts and all the things that we do to document, I'd be so sad. I had no idea it was going to last for 7 years. But the first year when we started to blog, it was really for our own record. I'm so grateful we have that now. And it's been amazing to be able to see, not only document the adventures that we've had, but to see how we've changed through our own writing. You can talk about that one.
Drawing each other's interests. Like I said, I've learned so much about archaeology and even anthropology just because that's what she loves. And, I could say that I've grown maybe a little bit more fond about it, and I'm very knowledgeable about this topic just really by exposure. So I think that this is a very important thing, you know.
Yeah. Make art. It doesn't matter if you're painting a wall. Use art as an expression, whether it's drawing or doing something digitally, but do a creative outpour of whatever you're inspired to do because of the experience. You're in magical places. Maybe it's a collage, maybe it's a piece of writing, but make art. Always process what you've had externally, process it internally, and get it back out through your own vehicle, which is your body and your own mind and creativity. It's a beautiful way to really be present with the experience, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. That's the other thing. I come from a background of art, and I've been an art director for many, many, many years in my career, and part of sort of ramping up the creativity is scribbling. I used to pull my designers off their computers because they get so caught up in details, which is what you have to do as a designer. But they were so caught up, they forgot to tap into their own creativity. I'd pull them off the computer and get them to sit down and scribble with big crayons. It's the idea of expressing that kind of energy, which is inside of each one of us. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Use that creative inspiration, that creative spark, which is sparked by the world around us, and get it out however you can. So, play. We almost got kicked out of Machu Picchu for doing this, but play together. Play, have fun. Miro's doing the crab, and I'm doing the jump. So play. Again, it goes back to not being too serious about everything. Make sure you play as a family. And food. The taste, the flavors of the places that you're going to. This is a real incredible way to experience the world around you. And reflection. We have this, I'm showing you this set of cards. We've developed a set of questions to ask ourselves about the day's experience. How do we notice people around us meeting their needs? And when we do our retreats, we actually do this in a circle time. And it's a really great time to end the day, to sum up everything that you've done, to talk about what worked, what didn't work, talk about what you've noticed about people outside and around you, and talked about what came up for you. So we do that almost nightly. Well, we do it nightly in our retreats, but we haven't been doing this since we've been traveling. But we go back to doing this quite often when we're having this incredible experience, because it's important for us to reconnect and process, and then a lot of times close our emotions and processes for the day, so we can start a new one. Why don't you talk about this?
Through travel, you can commit to trying something new almost daily, just by the sheer amount of new experiences that are around you. And I think this is one of the best ways to learn, or even to learn about your own passions, because once you try something new and you experiment, I think that you have a chance to really discover an amazing passion and really spark something great. But you never know until you try it. So I think committing to trying something new is very important.
Explore into the unknown. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. And again, laugh daily. I cannot be strong enough. Have fun. Make sure that your daily life includes lots and lots and lots of laughter. So you got to have fun doing it. Why is world schooling important on a global scale? We talked about worldviews. This is something that we're, again, very, very conscious about. Expanded worldviews, both individually and collectively, are important. I want to see a more peaceful planet. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through greater compassion, more empathy, more understanding, more connectedness. So this is what travel does. It also provides a sense of global citizenship. You feel an actual ownership of the planet versus just your small portion that you're living in. And it really shifts the way that you act. You will think before, littering. It gives you a greater sense of consciousness. Gives you a deeper understanding for humanity and greater compassion. I cannot really talk about this more. I mean, it's so, it's hard to drop bombs on people that you know. It's just that simple. A dominant global consciousness means that every citizen can celebrate their differences with compassion and value and similarities with pride. That will shift your experience in the world. Remember in the beginning I told you I was such a fearful person when we set out on our travels? Well, I'm not that fearful person anymore, and now differences no longer are a source of fear. Now I see the similarities versus the differences in people. And now, I've transitioned into somebody who has such an open heart and such a compassionate stance for the people around me. It's who we've turned into, through this process. I'm so lucky, and I want everybody to have this sense of, wow, the world is incredible, and people are so interesting, and wow, it's amazing to be a part of humanity. And I've got that truly with our daily lives. Yeah. How do you world school from home? I'm going to give you some ideas here. Host couch surfers. Even when we're traveling and we stay in one place for a period of time, we open up our place and bring in other travelers. You can do this. You can host couch surfers and really get a sense of somebody else's culture. It's really a cultural exchange. If you've got a couch, seriously, or a space on your floor, they will take it. And it's a lovely way to learn about other people from other places of the world. This is actually our board. This is a real board. We were hosting couch surfers, and we had so many people coming to us in Cusco. You see Bulgaria, Russia, USA, Ecuador, Brazil, Taiwan, Spain, and U.S. This is just like, a period of 2 weeks. We actually had burnout hosting couch surfers for a while, but we would go through these phases. This is such a great way for cultural exchange. So I really urge you to look into it. It's a free. You're doing it out of the out of the goodness of your heart. Are you guys all familiar with couch surfing? Yeah. Okay. Couchsurfing.org. Sign up. You put your profile up. You say, I've got a couch, I've got a spare room, or I've got an area on my floor. I will host you for free. Come in, be my guest, and I want to learn about you, and I'll tell you about my town. That's all it is. Have language meetups. If you're interested, this is me and the howler monkey, and Miro going, yeah, she knows the language. If you're interested in learning a new language, the best way to do it is put an ad on Craigslist or whatever your local community, and have people meet at a coffee shop and start conversational Spanish or conversational Russian or conversational whatever. It's a great way to meet up with people of all walks of life and share language and learn something in the meantime. But language meetups are incredible and super, super easy to organize. Make a foreign food get-together. Invite your friends over for a potluck. It's super easy. Host a potluck and the theme is Latin America. Host a potluck and the theme is Asia. Or host a potluck and the theme is your culture, and talk about it that way. So there are ways to, like I said, world school from home. Watch foreign films. Go to museums, cultural events, and shows. I mean, in everybody's hometown, there's always traveling shows. The Russian ballet, Spanish art exhibit. It's a great way to world school with not traveling. and read international news. And this is read or watch on TV or watch videos or whatever. This is actually a really great way to kind of loosen your connection to your American-centric worldview. The farther you get away from, not remove it, but the farther you create space around your American worldview, you can see how other people are viewing news in other countries, and it may be the exact same news event. It'll give you not only an idea of how they're reporting, but how news is reported in your own country. This is a really interesting, way to explore world schooling. And I'd be interested to hear what you discover through this. So how do others world school? This is the Schaefer family. They're currently based out of Oregon, USA, and they have a little farm with chicken, goats, rabbits. They unschool their children, teaching homesteading skills, foraging, reading, writing, math through the experience and research on the farm. Sabrina's children learn history, science, social studies, and from semi-annual trips to museums, historical landmarks, powwows, aquariums, zoos, natural parks, foreign countries, etc. They also have family, and their children have been to Kenya and over 24 national parks. They consider themselves world schoolers. Next family is the Terrapins. Here.
Okay. So the Terrapin family, they travel full-time by way of boat, as you can see. The parents created a loose curriculum for their daughters. Oh, excuse me. They created a loose curriculum for their daughters, and the mother of the Terrapin family is a former high school teacher. So that's very insightful. For them, world schooling is intentionally learning about where they are and the significance of what's around them. They use certain books to educate, not just their daughters, but the entire family, as they typically learn together as a family. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so the next group is the Global Field Trip. We actually met this family in Peru. They're really lovely. Katrina, Oliver, Zoe, and Michaela are a Canadian family who took a 1-year sabbatical with the intention of world schooling, learning through travel. The mom is a teacher, and their world schooling is more structured than our style, of course, and closely resembles homeschooling. Everyone in the family has alternative days writing about their adventures on their blog. They also do a lot of pre-research, and they're very technology heavy. They focus their travels based on their interests only, and that includes animals, world religions, etc. From their website, they write, "We want to invest in ourselves as a family and help our children become positive global citizens." It's a common theme. "We believe that the best way to expose our children to the world is to provide them with the richest education possible through travel. Certainly, all the information about any particular place on the earth or time in history is available at the click of a button. Just Google that. But they get more through immersive travel. So you can see. The next family that we'd like to highlight.
They're the Suero family. They're currently in Quito, Ecuador. And they started their world schooling journey about a year ago when they left Boston for Costa Rica. After spending a year in Costa Rica, they realized that the education of their children were getting through travel was worth continuing. They world school their daughter, and they attend a French school in the country that they reside in. Their son will eventually join the sister, although he's getting a world schooling education as well, just in a different capacity. They like to think of themselves as eclectic world schoolers because they use a hybrid of resources to educate their daughter. She takes several globally focused online classes where she interacts with children and teachers of varying ages from all over the world. These classes give her the opportunity to stretch her world schooling education beyond the boundaries of the country they live in. In addition to online classes, she has always had a local Spanish and French teacher whom she meets with in person. These individuals are adults that can offer her a glimpse into the life and customs of locals, as well as improve her second and third language. This experience gives her the opportunity to be taught by someone other than the parents.
So you can see that there's a lot of different ways that you can world school. You can do it from your own home. You can be an expat. You could be living on a boat. Or you could be radical unschoolers like us. So finally, the last thing we want to share with you is my son and I created a project called Project World School. And this year coming up is going to be our 4th year hosting these immersive retreats for teenagers. I love working with teens. My son happens to be one. And we have, through all of our own experiences, of course, noticed that we've learned so much. So what we've done is we've designed these 1 month or 22 to 25-day retreats where we actually come together and create a learning community and have these immersive experiences together. And we use the process of, of reflecting the circle time. We are involved in team building and all this other stuff. Instead of just telling you about it, I'm going to show you our video that actually a teen from Mexico made for us about a month ago. I just sent her all of the information. She made this video about our retreats, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you.
Lifelong friendships. Cultural awareness. Life-changing experiences. Expanding worldviews. And of course, lots of fun.
Project World School provides all of these opportunities and many more.
Project World School teen retreats were created to be a catalyst for change, transforming individual worldviews that affect our collective perceptions of humanity.
Project World School provides temporary learning communities around the globe so that teens can come together and learn about the world.
As a community, we learn by doing, interacting and seeing the world through the lenses of the people in our host countries.
Marine biology and conservation look very different from a fisherman's point of view. Archaeology and history come alive at the sites of ancient ruins, and deeper perspectives are gained when talking to the ancestors of the builders themselves. I've learned so many things in the context of travel. My world has expanded in ways I could have never imagined.
Project World School is a collaborative process, co-creating every experience, resulting in deep experiential learning and powerful team building.
Those who participate are inspired to continue their world travels and education beyond Project World School.
Hi, I'm Lainey. I'm an accidental unschooler and an advocate for life learning at any age. And along with my son Miro, I am the co-founder of Project World School.
And I'm Miro, a traveler, writer, and Project World School co-founder. My mom and I have been following our interests on the road, and the planet has been transformed into our classroom.
We are World Schoolers. Over 6 years ago, Miro and I set out to explore the world. Since then, we've discovered life in partnership, focused on learning naturally, inspired by the world around us. We've also discovered there's a name for what we are doing, unschooling. Since travel has been an integral part of our learning experience, we call our style of education World Schooling.
Project World School was created out of the desire to create community and share the experience of world schooling with other self-directed teens as a way to connect with each other and the world on a deeper level.
We envision a time when Project World School becomes an integral part of every self-directed learner's adolescence.
We envision a world where these teens go back to their homes and communities to make changes,
share greater cultural awareness, and become thought leaders.
We consider Project World School to be a catalyst for a more peaceful planet. Project World School retreats are a network of temporary learning communities throughout the world to encourage interaction before, during, and after the month-long events.
We are here to support world schoolers, homeschoolers, unschoolers, and self-directed learners from all walks of life.
Natural learning brings the focus back to the nature of the learner, allowing individual interests to guide their actions and determine how deep they want to dive into a subject.
We are true believers in social learning and practice it ourselves in our daily lives.
We have noticed on our travels, when we have shared experiences with a group of other people, everyone spontaneously contributes through conversation, observation, and sharing previously acquired knowledge. These social learning experiences are lasting, transforming the natural learning into a meaningful social activity.
Our retreats focus on 3 areas of learning: social and interpersonal development, where we view the world through a different lens; personal development, where we encourage teens to step outside of their comfort zone; and experiential academics, where we focus on sciences, history, humanity, and languages.
The benefits of creating a learning community are countless.
We want the participants to understand that traveling is fun and that they can make an actual difference in the world.
Our retreats inspire confidence, and the teens understand that they can do anything, go anywhere, whether it's to do more travel or to do more study in a field that they are passionate about. We create an experience that motivates them to want to continue learning the rest of their lives.
The students also continue their learning once they get home. They have the opportunity to reflect on their experiences.
I love to see kids come to life to realize their own potential. Project World School opens their eyes up to different cultures through the process of experience and immersion. It is especially important during adolescence, a time when every teen decides how they fit into the world.
Together, as a community, we get to step outside of our comfort zones and experience life in a new environment, whether it is in Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Thailand, or Wales. Learning is contagious when it's fun.
At Project World School, we take citizens from a single country and transform them into global citizens. I find this the most fulfilling work I can do. I see a more peaceful planet through the eyes of Project World School team participants.
Welcome to Project World School. The world awaits.